Here's the story of 6 buying experts who were very successful in their jobs, leading procurement offices across the country, from Alaska and PA to Arkansas.
Hello, today we're talking about planning in the COVID-19 recovery period. Typically, planning for us in procurement helps us to decide what to buy, when to buy, and from what sources. But due to the pandemic, planning has taken on an urgency we've never seen before. We cannot wait. Any item that you anticipate needing to bring students and employees back must be ordered today. Let's start with availability. We're accustomed to ordering things and receiving them in a timely manner, and so are our users. This is changing in many commodity categories. Items such as PPE, IT equipment, cleaning and sanitization products are now scarce, along with long lead times. Even manufacturers are experiencing longer lead times on their raw materials, or they may not be available at all. Early planning is the key here. Work with your users to anticipate their needs, because we all know most users are not the best at planning what they're going to be needing. So it's up to us to reach out to them to be able to help them, guide them through this process so they'll have what they need when they need it.
Yeah, you're right, Jane. And there's some other challenges too when you think about planning. You know, typically when we prepare a solicitation for a future need, or when we're negotiating a contract, procurement would use historical data, or maybe look at some predictive analytics, or use program experts to determine the product and supply quantities needed, or specific services that'll be needed over the term of a contract, or some service levels that can be expected. Further, we often have an idea of what the budget will look like or associated with that contract, especially if it's a service-related contract. However, you know, in the current environment and the near-term environment, as we're planning for our future needs, many of the factors that we've counted on for years and years and years and in the past are totally unknown. Our historical usage data may not be applicable at all. And can we really predict what we might need for certain supplies and services, given what's happened over the last several months? And our budgets, as we all know, are not in a normal state anymore. They're very in a state of flux right now. So due to these unknown economic factors and the unknown economic future, I can see procurement officials developing contracts and negotiating contracts that contain some very flexible terms to allow for adjustments, and or contracts that maybe are for shorter periods of time to allow for change more often. This is just a few more things that CPOs are going to be thinking about as they develop their plans going forward.
Right, and Mike, actually jumping off of that a little bit, we've spent the better part of the past few decades trying to get rid of warehouse operations and, you know, really taking your inventory to just-in-time levels. And I think because of the pandemic, we've really gotten a wake-up call as to what that has done to our supply chains. And now what do? I think one thing that you should think about doing is looking at your contract language. There are certain warehouse that are critical, perhaps, but if you don't have the space for that, you need to look to your suppliers to help you with it. A lot of these suppliers are looking at their supply chains and where they're getting things as well, and tracing that supply chain and the security of it. I think we're probably going to see a lot of stuff come back onto the US soil for production, and maybe there's some consideration there as well. Because we've spent the past 10, 20 years getting rid of our warehouses, some places don't have it anymore. They don't even have any place to put their extra supplies that they're going to need or they may need.
Yeah, that's a good point, Judy. I was going to follow up on your comment a little bit, and Mike had mentioned budgeting. I think, you know, budgeting from an agency standpoint is going to become even more critical, obviously, as there's anticipated revenue shortfalls and potential reduction in force type movement. The element of budgeting, not only from procurement, but from those customer agencies or departments internally, are going to become ever more important. And I think, you know, one tool that we always refer to is certainly cooperative purchasing, and how will that support that budgeting, you know, focus. And really, again, it's about cost savings And it's about efficiency. Can you get more things out of less work or less effort from the agency that's going to be constrained already? And how can they take those cooperative agreements, and turn them into leverage buys that help their buying power? A little bit of what you talked about also, I think it also gives the agency some flexibility to say, we never bought that, we've never needed that, but now we need it, and we have to have a quick way to get it. And I think that's a way to look at budgeting as the tool to drive usefulness of the best in class type cooperative contracts in procurement.
Yeah, and one thing that's underpinning all of this is communication. That's going to be key. Again, as you mentioned, Jason, we're looking at buying things we've literally never had to think about before. And so, going back to Mike's point about, we just don't have the data. So we're going to have to come up with a lot of this from scratch. And, traditionally governments, we're okay at communicating, but we're going to have to kick that up into a different gear at all levels. Agencies, to make sure we're not battling with each other internally, and then reaching out to our peers in other states and other counties, other higher eds, to make sure that, at least check to look and see if what we're doing is what others are doing. And if there is a chance to, combine our purchases and, or at least share, best practices or lessons learned, all of that is beneficial. But I think, this is going to be an opportunity where we can look at, existing cooperatively competed contracts, or, get together and pool our needs and establish new ones going forward.
I think you're right in that looking at being able to look at best practices and talk to other people is going to be very key in this, and talking to your users to really motivate them to the planning and understanding, because they really don't understand why it's not going to behave the same way typically. But also, I think one of the things we fail to realize sometimes when we're thinking about using a cooperative contract is it allows our very limited resources on our staffs to be able to focus on the big issues instead of day-to-day contracting. So using cooperative contracts can get you to some of those things very quickly, and then let your staff focus on some of the more complex, really pressing issues that they're dealing with. But I think we all agree that we can't take a breath right now in procurement. You can't step back and go, okay, well, the crisis is about over. We need to, kind of get back to normal. It's time to put our heads down and really help our entities plan and help them get ready so that they will have the items that they need when they're needed, during the year. And we've got a fiscal year getting ready to end, starting a new one. So there's a lot of things going on. I know it's tough out there, but we've got to keep our heads down and figure out ways to move our entities forward and being able to get the things that they need and being able to plan for those.